Hello everybody, welcome to my channel once again from a very cold Cape Town. There really is such an icy chilly wind blowing today, but I'm braving it to sit outside and just connect with you all. So I've been thinking recently, it's very hard to get to know somebody when you've only really met them on a YouTube channel or something. And I would like to give you a little bit of insight into my background and why I feel that I am qualified to help people who are dealing with major change, also trauma or loss, particularly to do with grieving the loss of a loved one, that kind of thing. Loss obviously means different things to different people. It can be the loss of an income, a loss of a beloved home, a loss of a pet, a loss of a loved one, a family member, any kind of trauma where you've placed some kind of importance on a person or a material item, a possession. It can be very traumatic when that item or person is no longer in your life. And I am qualified to help people sort of deal with this aspect of life, for the following reasons. As far as change goes, let me start there. At the age of 13, my parents decided to emigrate and bring the whole family from the UK, where I was born, to live in South Africa. So you can imagine, age 13, I was already just going into my adolescent years, and I'd just gone into high school in the UK, done my first year, and was just settling in when this huge upheaval happened. And we emigrated and came to live in South Africa. And at that stage of my life, it was massive upheaval as far as education goes. Everything about it was a real challenge for me, more so than my younger brothers probably. But it was a different culture. I had to learn a language that I'd never spoken before, something called Afrikaans, which was part of the school curriculum, and it was a prerequisite for moving on to the next year after your final year exams. So there was an enormous amount of pressure on me from that point of view, as well as learning an entirely new syllabus. So that was the first big one. Subsequently, I have moved home to date 47 times. So I know about change. And believe me, it's taken a long time for me to actually be comfortable, or more, not entirely comfortable, but a lot more comfortable with the idea of change. I find it absolutely fine and exciting. I love the challenge of change when I've initiated it. But it's taken me a very long time to become comfortable with the idea of change when it was sort of forced on me, if you like, when it wasn't something that I had initiated. And I've had to learn coping mechanisms for that, because at times the changes have been also quite traumatic. I have moved back and forth between South Africa and the UK for work purposes a lot. So I'm very used to having to start over again and living in other people's spaces while I was working, not having the freedom that I have if I'm in my own home space. So those are different kinds of change adjustments that I've had to learn to cope with. Apart from that, when it comes to trauma and dealing with the changes that huge life changes bring for us, yeah, I don't have a great track record as far as relationships go. I've been unbelievably blessed, I believe, in the people that have chosen to be in relationship with me throughout my life. And I have learned so much from them and through the relationship. A lot of it, though, was very traumatic, partly because my first marriage was at age 19. And quite honestly, looking back, I can totally see that I was in no way equipped at that age, emotionally or psychologically, for something as serious as marriage. So, it wasn't that my husband was a horrible person with me. He's actually an amazing human being, and we're still friends. We have a beautiful son together. But unfortunately, for various reasons, it just didn't work, and we decided to part ways. I was on my own for quite a while, and then I met somebody, and a bit of a moment of madness, I guess. We decided to get married, and unfortunately, it was disastrous. And after a year, we both agreed that it just was all wrong, and we were doing each other a lot of damage by staying together. So we parted ways. So again, I was going through the pain and trauma of losing a really big relationship in my life, ended again in divorce, losing everything again and having to start over from scratch. And then after quite a while of once again being on my own, I met somebody, and after about 18 months we decided to get married. And for me it was, I really, really wanted that relationship, that marriage to work, and I put everything into it. Sadly, my husband, who has since passed away, in fact, two of my husbands have passed away, he struggled terribly with alcoholism and other issues, which added to the stress and challenges that we had to deal with as a couple in a marriage. And I stuck it out for 19 years, really wanting it to work. I just felt like such a failure when I finally had to admit that after 19 years nothing was really changing for the better. In fact, it was just deteriorating at a rapid rate, and the effect on my well-being was becoming very obvious. And so I walked away. And unfortunately, once again, I lost everything. I came back, I was living in the UK at that time, and I came back to South Africa and started from scratch yet again with, honestly, I had nothing. Anyway, picked myself up, dusted myself off, started again, and then reconnected with my childhood sweetheart, who I'd known for, at that point, I think it was about 34 years, plus minus. But when we'd known each other as 14-year-olds, it was very, very innocent. And it took us all those years to actually get together as a couple. And we were very happy together. He was a beautiful soul. Sadly, after 4 years together, he was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. And it took another 2 years of him struggling through the dreadful battle that people go through, trying all sorts of treatments, whatever was available. And after 2 years, he succumbed to the cancer. I was his primary carer throughout that time, so it was a very emotional roller coaster ride for both of us. Obviously a different experience for each of us. But I was utterly devastated when he died. And I found myself, for the 4th time, alone with nothing, and having to try to figure out what next. Sorry about the noise. It took me a good few years, probably 4 years, to really come to terms with everything that had happened and to start feeling more emotionally balanced once again. And it was at that point that I started exploring the idea of becoming a living carer, once again back in the UK. So I made all my preparations and off I went. And for the next 5 years, I travelled back and forth between South Africa and the UK, working as a living carer, mainly in palliative care. So working with people that were approaching end of life. All of them had very debilitating physical issues, various issues. And I had to learn to deal with all of these different things. And I'm not medically trained at all. So a lot of it was being thrown in the deep end and having to swim, literally, as well as catching the emotional and psychological fallout of what these people were going through. So it was very tough, but I feel unbelievably blessed and privileged to have gone through that. And now I'm back in South Africa, and I had made the decision that I didn't want to go back to caring. I really wanted to restart my healing practice, which I had put on hold since 2005. And that's what I'm in the process of doing at the moment. So, honestly, loss and change is something that I'm very familiar with. I'm familiar with all the ups and downs, the trauma, the process that one often has to go through, and I understand that that is different for each person. But I know that there are many things that I can relate to in other people's journey of working through trauma, loss, and having to start their lives over again. So that, alongside the healing modalities that I've become proficient in, and working with tarot, which I have found to be an unbelievably useful tool as far as uncovering what might be causing us to get a bit stuck, really, not be able to move forward or to find clarity about the next step forward. I found it a very interesting journey learning tarot myself. It's been a healing tool that I'm using. I use it all the time. So I'm very excited to be able to combine it with everything else that I've learned over my lifetime, and the healing modalities that I work with, energy rebalancing mainly. And I'm very, very pleased that I'm now in a position to be able to offer this to other people. So I would really love to hear from you. I'd love to have a conversation. I am passionate about helping people to come to terms with approaching death and dying, or if it's the death of a loved one, then helping people to come to terms with the approaching loss and how to cope with that. And also after the fact, what I've realized is when someone is dying, a loved one, you actually go through the process of grieving twice. You go through it before they die, and you have to start over again after they die. So it's a very painful, very unpredictable journey. And it isn't a linear journey either. You know, the same painful issues can come back to revisit one at the most unexpected moments and catch you unawares. And so, having been through it myself, I do feel that I have something to offer to anyone else who's going through that. And I would love you to look at my website to find out a lot more. There's a lot more information there that's available, as well as guided meditations that I've created that are based loosely on the major arcana of the tarot, the archetypes. And if one can learn to take on and embody these archetypal energies and characteristics, they can be an extremely helpful tool. So thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to having a conversation with you and hopefully meeting face to face at some point in the future. So thank you very much. Take care, and I send love and blessings. Love and blessings.